Sit back down and shut your trap. It's time for
Keeping It Sports with M3.
Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Well, I'll need some beer.
Are you ready?
You have to ask me nicely.
Come on now, don't be bashful.
Are you ready? Are you ready for
Place for the best sports talk and news surrounding each league.
I can prove it with my usual flawless logic.
Hey man, this time we're gonna do it my way.
What's your name again?
And now, here's your host, M3, Mike Rosansky. Coming to you from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. It's time for Keeping It Sports with M3, powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm, of course, your host, Mike M3 Rosansky, coming to you here on this Monday, the 20th day of July for 2026. Hope you're all having a great day. Hope you're all off to a great start in your week, whatever it is you may be doing at this moment in time. Thank you once again, as always, for spending a little bit of time in your day as I rant and rave about whatever may be on my mind when it pertains to the sports world. Remember, as always, you can find me on social media through both Instagram and X under the names Keeping It Sports with M3, as well as Mike M3 Rosansky. You can also find me, and this is probably the much easier way of finding all of this, both the social media feeds as well as the podcast streaming through our Linktree page. Go to linktree.com, type in M3 Rosansky, and there you'll find the page I have set up for Keeping Sports with M3, which is going to lead you to all of your favorite podcasting platforms, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio Podcast, Amazon Music, as well as the main one, Podbean.com. And as always, I thank you and appreciate all of and any of the support I get for Keeping Sports with M3. I like to consider myself as still a rather young person. I mean, 37, turning 38 in about a month. But I consider myself a young person with kind of an old soul. And there's old sayings out there that I believe in, that I tend to bring up a lot in my everyday life. And there's two of them that ran through my mind in this last weekend that perfectly describe how I feel as a sports fan right now, in particular, a baseball fan. Those two sayings being, let sleeping dogs lie, and objects in the mirror may be closer than they appear. Because a month ago at this time, the Boston Red Sox were dead. The Boston Red Sox were a non-factor when it comes to this MLB season. We were looking at them as one of the bigger disasters in the sport. The main themes of their season were Alex Cora getting fired in April, them being without Garrett Crochet due to injury, and him getting off to an awful start in his season. The continued nonsense with Wilson Contreras as far as him getting ejected from games and being an emotional hothead constantly. But somewhere along the line, this Red Sox team has snapped out of that funk, unfortunately, and come to life. Over the last month, they've been the best team in baseball, as they've now won 21 of their last 26 games. They're on a 13-game winning streak, including this past weekend coming out of the All-Star break, sweeping the Tampa Rays in a 4-game set up there at Fenway, and doing it every way possible You want to talk about dominant pitching performances in their afternoon game on Friday when they shut them out 10-0. Or getting into slugfests over the weekend and Willer Abreu continuing his torrid pace. He's hit over this stretch of games for the Red Sox. He's hit 10 of his 15 home runs this season, including having 4 multi-home run games. They're winning games in a come-from-behind fashion. Whether it be Saturday afternoon, they're down by 3 in the 7th inning and piled together a rally that largely started with 2 outs in the inning. And then once again, there he is, Willer Abreu putting the explanation point on it with a 2-run shot that gave them the lead. And from there, they never looked back. And they slammed the door shut on this series with another great pitching performance by Sonny Gray on Sunday afternoon, who's been, let's be fair about it, one of the better pitchers in baseball over the last 3 months as he pitched his 9th consecutive quality start. He's not allowed 3 runs in a start since April 14th. And it's not like the Red Sox have a bunch of thumpers in their lineup. You know, they don't have a bunch of guys that are hitting 30-plus home runs of the season. If they did, they wouldn't have gotten off to the awful, embarrassing start that they had this year. And Alex Cora would probably still have a job. But what they have is a bunch of grinders and some young kids that have started to show some life on this team. Some guys that came through their system, and maybe the managerial change is what it took. I mean, yeah, it did take a while for this run to get going. It was a month and a half after Cora got fired that they started to get going. But a lot of these guys on this team, whether you want to talk about Abreu, whether you want to talk about a guy like Romy Gonzalez, Jaron Durant, a lot of these guys came through that Red Sox system. Their interim manager, who might be working his way to becoming the permanent guy after this season, Chad Tracy, had worked his way through that system as a coach. So he already had experience working with a lot of these guys. There's a comfort level with a bunch of these players through working with him through the minor league system, as well as being around him during spring training. And you could make the argument that a lot of the, if you want to call it blame or you want to call it credit for this run that they've gone on, can be placed at the feet of our New York Yankees. Because think about this. The Yankees were much in the situation that the Rays were in over this weekend. The Red Sox came out of the All-Star break still with a losing record, and the Red Sox mopped the floor with them. The Yankees on June 19th had a 12.5 game lead over the Red Sox in the East, and the Red Sox were 6.5 games back for the third wild card spot. They had the second worst record in the American League. The Yankees had the chance at that time to put the nail in the casket of the Boston Red Sox. But a week later, they would go up to Fenway Park and get swept in a 4-game set by the Red Sox, much in the same fashion that the Rays did. In every way possible. You had a come-from-behind victory against Cam Skattebo. You had great pitching performances by Sonny Gray and a walk-off victory on Sunday Night Baseball that weekend that made it as miserable a weekend as you can ask for as a Yankee fan and as exhilarating a weekend as you could ask for if you're a Red Sox fan. And at the time, I more so attributed it to the poor play that the Yankees were going through. You know, the beginning of what has commonly become their June swoon. Well, now you look at it a month later, and the Red Sox go from being a team that we looked at as someone that would start selling off pieces 2 weeks from today at the trade deadline to now being a contender. Listen, it's not like the Yankees and the Red Sox were ever going to be trade partners as it is. They've made, 2 trades between the two of them in the last 10 to 15 years. There was way back when they acquired Steven Drew from the Red Sox. And then there was, in recent years, the trade that sent Alex Verdugo from the Red Sox to the Yankees. But other than that, these two longtime rivals, if you want to call them that still, don't come together very often as trade partners. Now, I seem to feel that the rivalry has kind of cooled off in the last about 15 years. You don't quite have the personalities on this team that you did in the past. There isn't that utter hatred that they had for us when we had the likes of Jeter, A-Rod, Posada, Pettit, Rivera, and there doesn't seem to be that guy on the Red Sox that you utterly hate, like when they had Manny, David Ortiz, Jason Varitek, Kurt Schilling, Pedro, amongst others, Jonathan Papelbon, also in the mix. Maybe if he sticks around there long term, Wilson Contreras is starting to become that guy. And the same could be said with the former Yankee closer, Aroldis Chapman. But there isn't that intensity to this rivalry, or at least hasn't been in recent years. But now we have to start taking the Boston Red Sox seriously here, as they've gone on this run, while meanwhile the Yankees and the Rays have started to slip up a little bit. They go from being one of the worst teams in the American League to having a month where they're the best team in the American League and put themselves right back in the mix of playoff contention. They sit here today only 6 back of the Rays for the lead in the AL East, 4.5 behind the Yankees in second for the AL East. They currently sit there in the third AL wildcard spot. And you look the next week for the Red Sox with the way they're playing is very appetizing when you consider, a lot of this streak has taken place at Fenway Park, but they don't get to leave the friendly confines there for at least another week, as they're going to have 3 against the Baltimore Orioles, who have won 7 games in a row in their own right after sweeping the Astros over the weekend. And then play 3 against the very disappointing Toronto Blue Jays at the end of this week. So who knows what this win streak could get to. But the point of all of this is it has now put even more pressure on the Yankees, especially Brian Cashman and the hierarchy of the New York Yankees. Before, you just thought, all right, we got one team to deal with in the Tampa Bay Rays. They're a feisty bunch. They're a team that tends to give us trouble, but we can beat them. And one team to deal with for the division is a lot more of a, I don't know if you want to call it easy, but more appetizing task to deal with than it is to deal with multiple teams having to battle it out for the division. And while the Red Sox are going to have a more appetizing route in the coming days with their schedule up there at Fenway Park, the Yankees are in the midst of a really difficult part of their schedule. They come out of the All-Star break with 22 consecutive games against teams that are either at or above 500. While you want to take every opponent somewhat seriously, you want to take things day by day and not fret about the long term of anything. I mean, we've seen the Pirates have been bringing up some young players, and they're a pesky bunch. You get somewhat fortunate in this series. You don't have to face Paul Skeens. But then this weekend, you come down to the city of brotherly love and take on the Phillies, who, yeah, they just lost 2 out of 3 to the Mets over the weekend. But we've seen the way the Phillies have been playing since Don Mattingly taken over as manager there. You've seen the torrid pace that Kyle Schwarber's been on, the great season that Bryce Harper is having. The pitching staff that they're running out there is elite, led by Wheeler, Sanchez, and Luzardo. So this is going to be a rather difficult test for this Yankee team, who's coming off of a series against the Dodgers where, yeah, you lose 2 out of 3 to the Dodgers. It's the Dodgers. They're the best team in baseball. But I don't come away from this weekend feeling any better about the Yankees' chances. They couldn't get anything offensively done on Friday night. Getting a great performance by Garrett Cole. The only run you score was on that wild pitch by Sasaki in the 4th inning that was pretty much a gift-wrapped run for you. You had plenty of chances throughout that game, but Dominguez left 2 runners stranded in the 6th. Grisham gets thrown out at home plate trying to score on a double by Ben Rice in the 8th inning. And you just had this eerie feeling throughout this game that one run was not going to do it against the Dodgers. Even with your pitching staff able to hold them at bay, you figured at some point someone was going to be a hero for them, and that hero would turn out to be Max Muncy with his 2-run shot in the 7th inning. Then you get to Sunday where you have to play a doubleheader due to Saturday's rainout. And the afternoon portion of that game annoyed the living crap out of me. It's going to happen. Cam Schlittler's not going to be perfect every time out. See, you figure when his main pitch in his arsenal is the fastball, and he's going up against a team that hits well against fastballs that are 95 plus, there's going to be maybe a bit of a struggle there, or maybe a comeback to earth moment for him, because he's been so great. He's been so elite this season. But my main problem is the offensive approach against Yamamoto. Yamamoto is great. He's probably going to be in the Cy Young conversation in the National League when all is said and done. But he threw a complete game against the Yankees, allowing only 4 hits, one of those being Trent Grisham's home run, and got it done in 102 pitches. He got through the first 3 innings on only 28 pitches. The Yankees played that first game like they had dinner reservations in between the 2 games. And you got very fortunate to come away with a split in this day-night doubleheader, as both teams decided to go with bullpen games in the second game. The Yankees almost got away with it until Cruz gave up a home run to Edman in the 8th inning. And then you get a Yankee Stadium special home run by Jazz Chisholm. But once again, you saw a lot of the problems with this Yankee team throughout this doubleheader, and that's their inability to score with runners in score position, their inability to have the big moment. Yes, Jazz Chisholm had the go-ahead homer off of Evan Phillips, but you'd like to see more than just 2 runs in a game. 2 runs in a game is not going to beat a lot of teams. Hell, 9 times out of 10, 2 runs in a game is not going to beat this Dodger team. And that's the kind of teams that you're going to be judging yourself up against. The Dodgers, the Phillies, the Brewers, the Rays, the Red Sox. Whoever decides that they want to win the AL Central and Western divisions, although those teams haven't exactly shown themselves to be the most terrorizing of divisions so far this season. And the AL has been a truly wide open league for any team beyond the Yankees and Rays to step up. And unfortunately, that team has been the Red Sox. And now that with us being 2 weeks ahead of the trade deadline, it's a time where there's a lot of pressure on Brian Cashman and his group of nerds or cronies, whatever you want to put on them. You're still without Aaron Judge. While you got some positive news this week, it didn't make you feel any better about a pending return for him because he's still not allowed to start baseball activities while the injury to his ribs is healing. Remember, he hasn't done any upper body strength lifting since going on the IL. He's been limited to lower body work. He hasn't taken any BP. So it's going to be a while before he takes batting practice or gets into rehab games. It's not just going to be one of these things where they say injuries healed and he's back next week. No, he's essentially, with the amount of time he's missed, going to have to go through the equivalent of a spring training. So you're probably looking at the very end of August, beginning of September before Aaron Judge comes back. And Aaron Judge can't just come back and swing a magic wand and it heal all the wounds with this team. It doesn't just suddenly make the likes of Austin Wells a better hitter or Anthony Volpe a better hitter, two guys who have been black holes for this lineup. It doesn't change the narrative of what has been an awful season for Jazz Chisholm going into free agency, even despite last night's home run. Doesn't change the fact that after the top 3 or 4 spots in this lineup, you're dealing with a lot of issues in the bottom portion of the lineup, or the fact that you've got some injuries in this starting rotation, but you're starting to see guys work their way out of it, with Max Fried starting a rehab assignment over the weekend, Carlos Rodon starting to throw from the mound, even getting some positive, encouraging news about a potential return for Clark Schmidt at some point this year, although I think that's going to be more so out of the bullpen, if anything else. And the bullpen is a thing that has been annoying the crap out of me, especially over the last month. Bednar's been great. Cruz, outside of last night's hiccup, has been really, really good. Hedrick and Paul Blackburn, I don't think anyone expected these kind of seasons out of these two guys. They were just kind of the last guys to make the team out of the bullpen, and you were hoping for them to be somewhat serviceable. But they've filled in that void for what you've not gotten out of the likes of Camilo Duvall, Tim Hill, and Jake Bird, who once again got sent to the minor leagues in between last night's doubleheader. Cashman has got some things to fix on this team. You got to get an infielder. Like I said last week, if you could somehow combine what you get offensively from Ahmed Rosario and defensively from Ryan McMahon, you'd have a pretty good player. But unfortunately, that kind of human combination is not possible. So you're going to have to go outside the organization and find an infielder, as you've not gotten a lot offensively from the left side of that infield. And I just think it's time to end the Anthony Volpe. Clearly, there's some kind of negative vibe that his presence on this team, as much as some of the guys may say they like him, there's a negative vibe that is carried on with Volpe being here as just a shortstop that can't or won't, depending on who you talk to, play any other position. And it just kind of screws everything up when you put him in there. You've also got to get some bullpen help. And listen, I know the rumors are going to be out there from here until the trade deadline on August 3rd, but I am not buying any of this noise, any of this nonsense that's out there about the Yankees possibly getting Mason Miller. Would I love to get Mason Miller and add him to this bullpen? You damn well bet. He would make this bullpen immediately elite because you push everybody back an inning. You would have Bednard available as your setup guy to Miller and really lock down those last 2 to 3 innings. But the Padres just got him at last year's trade deadline. They traded their second best prospect overall to get him. I don't think A.J. Preller is in the mindset to be a seller. I also don't think that he's going to just give away Mason Miller without getting something in return, whether that be you having to give up a George Lombard Jr. as well as MLB-ready pitching, or if you didn't have to give up Lombard, I'm sure he would love to attach the contract of Xander Bogaerts onto Mason Miller, be creative that way, because that is look like a hideous contract for the Padres that they're going to have to deal with over the next 7 to 8 years. So all of these rumors around Miller, I think, are nonsense, as well as getting the Rockies catcher Hunter Goodman. He just had another 3 home runs yesterday, jump up to 30 on the season. Well, that would be a dream situation, as you would get a guy that's 26 and under team control for the next several years. I just don't think those are realistic moves, especially if you have followed the Yankees as much as I have. Brian Cashman has always seemed hesitant to trade what he perceives as the top prospects until they lose their value and they're not at the apex of what he once viewed them. Remember, he wouldn't trade Anthony Volpe several years back. Look how that has turned out. Then there was about 15 years ago, he wouldn't trade Eduardo Nunez to go get Cliff Lee. There's a bunch of examples I could throw out there where he prospect hugs these guys for dear life, and none of them have turned out to be the level of player that he expected them to be, or he made us think that they were going to be. So they're going to have to get creative this deadline. Those are the 3 main spots, bullpen, infield, and catcher, that they're going to have to look about upgrading here. You can't just rely on Judge being the antidote to solve all problems with this team. It's not like they're a racehorse running a 1-horse race now. Now they got not just the Rays to deal with, they've also got the Boston Red Sox and potentially, depending on how this week goes for them, the Baltimore Orioles. So as things seemed like a cakewalk to the postseason about a month ago at this time, things have really tightened up a bit in that AL East and made Brian Cashman's job even that more difficult. All right, a lot more I want to get to throughout the remainder of this podcast. Give you some thoughts coming up on the World Cup final yesterday, mix in some thoughts about the All-Star break, as well as the future of Francisco Lindor, mix in a little bit of NBA as well. So a lot I want to get to over the next about 40 minutes or so here. Glad you guys could join me this week. And like I tell you each and every single week this time, please sit back, relax, help put your feet up if you feel like it, and continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
Well, it was fun while it lasted, but yesterday marked the end of the men's FIFA World Cup tournament as we witnessed Spain knock off Argentina in the final. with a 1-0 overtime victory. Listen, to a lot of people, that game is going to be viewed as kind of a boring game, as Spain dominated most of the time of possession, but did so in almost a keep-away manner against Argentina, who was the team with the more offensive firepower, I guess it's fair to say, especially with a legend like Lionel Messi on their team. But Spain, if you've paid attention throughout this World Cup, this is how they have been beating teams. And 7 of their 8 victories were via shutout. The lone goal that they allowed was a late first half one against Belgium in the quarterfinals. They kept the ball away from Messi throughout this game, allowed very few opportunities for Argentina. In fact, Argentina had 0 true shots on goal, while Spain took 12 in their own right. You give a lot of credit to the goaltender for Argentina, Emiliano Martinez. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly there, for keeping it a shutout, keeping Spain at bay until you got to the second half of the overtime period. But once you saw Enzo Fernandez get ejected for his second yellow card of the game, you figured that it was only a matter of time until Spain finally put one in the back of the net and took the lead here. And finally, it was in that second half of overtime where Ferran Torres got the job done. And from there, they held on for the victory. They were not the most exciting team throughout this tournament. They didn't have the most flash to winning it from a goal scoring standpoint, but they were the team that most understood who they were, didn't try to get out of their own playing style and try to become something that they weren't. In the end, being themselves is what got the job done. Now, soccer fans everywhere are going to wonder what this means for Lionel Messi when it comes to his future as far as international play is concerned, whether he's going to play in the next World Cup, even though it takes place in Argentina. That's not until 2030, and at that time, he'll be 43 years old. And he really has nothing left to prove to us here when you consider he's played in 3 World Cup final, won one with Argentina in the last World Cup. He's had a remarkable international career, and the numbers are just staggering. He's going to go down as one of the greats of all time. So that's going to be something that I'm sure soccer fans everywhere wait with a bated breath. What I'm going to be interested to see, and I'm sure this is a topic that pops up at the end of every World Cup, how does it impact things in our country? We still to this day view football, basketball, baseball, and hockey as the big 4 when it comes to professional sports. Soccer, when it comes to the MLS, or fans being interested in UEFA or the Premier Leagues or any of those other international leagues, it hasn't increased the bubble. It hasn't increased the fan base as far as beyond casual viewing of soccer, and hasn't made the sport as popular as those other 4 sports I've mentioned. So is America just going to totally lose interest in soccer? And I view myself as more of a casual, someone who only really watches when the World Cup comes around. I mean, I pay attention to the headlines when they pop up here and there. But is soccer going to have some true staying power here now? Or by tomorrow, are we going to just view this as a thing in the past and start preparing ourselves for training camp when it comes to the NFL or the grind that is the baseball season, focusing more on the continued off seasons of the NBA and the NHL. So that'll be something to pay attention to going forward. Now, I mentioned NFL training camp, and that gets underway in the next couple of weeks. You're going to start to see teams slowly but surely report to training camp. And for a team that is looking to make strides forward, a team that is looking to have positive momentum after what was a great start to their off season, the Giants have really been noisy as hell the last month and a half of this off season. And no, we're not going to get into the Jackson Dart stuff again. That's a personal preference for him and something that shouldn't be made that big a deal of beyond the back and forth that him and Abdul Carter had on social media and in the locker room. What I'm talking about is the real off-the-field stupidity when it comes to some of the other young players on this team, mainly the combination of Malik Neighbors and Cam Skattebo. It's bad enough those two played in a celebrity all-star softball game in an off-season when they're still rehabbing from season-ending injuries last year. In the case of Malik Neighbors, you're watching the video when he was running to first base and how slow he was. In the case of Cam Skattebo, he's unnecessarily doing a backflip as he's going into home plate. But to add on top of it, you have Cam Skattebo over the weekend with his nonsense at Fanatics Fest in New York City. Well, I don't know if it was on Saturday or Sunday this took place, but the video started to go viral yesterday. If you've paid attention to Fanatics Fest, one of the most popular things there happens to be the WWE exhibit. They have a WWE-like entranceway. Fans get to meet some of the wrestlers that are there. But even some of the other athletes or entertainers that are at Fanatics Fest that either still are wrestling fans like myself or grew up as wrestling fans like to have their own personal entrances and come out of the entrance ramp, whether it be to a song of their choosing or to another wrestler's entrance theme. And there was a spot over the weekend where Cam Skattebo was making his entrance to WWE legend Triple H's theme song. And Skattebo, once again, on the entranceway, decided to attempt a backflip. Only this time, he didn't complete the backflip and stumbled while he was coming to his feet. It's like, dude, do you have any self-awareness? You realize that you're coming off of a fractured ankle injury from last year, an injury that has either shortened or ended other players' careers. You're very fortunate that it happened to you at a time where modern medicine and surgical procedures are so advanced that you could get back to hopefully at or near what you were before the injury. And you're out there, it's bad enough you did the backflip at the Celebrity All-Star Game. It's bad enough that you had that involvement in that WWE event last November when you were just coming off of ankle surgery. But now you're trying to do a backflip in front of fans to show off, have your look at me moment here. And you're going to be all laughs and giggles about it when you were speaking at an event later in the weekend at Fanatics Fest saying that I will not hurt myself before the season. And then to make things even worse, you've got a quarterback who in Jackson Dart had plenty of visits to the concussion protocol tent in his own right last year, is not the most safe in the world, is always looking for contact, and is not a guy that's going to hold you accountable at all. It was all laughs and giggles with it. And where's the adult in the room? Where's the one that's going to be like to these guys, hey, jackasses, let's calm the hell down. Dart, you were putting yourself at risk way too much last year and even missed a game due to concussion protocol. Cam Skattebo, you're a 4th-round draft pick that made pennies by NFL standards last year. Are fortunate that your career's not over, and at the pace that you're going, you're probably going to have a very short shelf life in the NFL. Wouldn't you want to maximize your career to the fullest, maximize your potential earning power to the fullest, and put yourself and the team in the best place possible to have success? And just the tone deafness with some of these young players on the Giants is unbelievable at times. And I just hope that John Harbaugh can get to these guys before they're not their ultimate self-destruction.
I'll be back.
They say real G's like to move in silence, much like the G in lasagna. Well, Sam Presti of the Oklahoma City Thunder is continuing to prove that he's playing chess while the rest of the league is playing checkers, with the positioning that he's putting the Thunder in for not just success now, but continued success moving forward. You look at this off-season so far, an off-season that began much earlier than I think anyone with the Thunder would have hoped it would have, after losing in the Western Conference Finals in 7 games to the San Antonio Spurs. And in that time, they've moved off of some players in their rotation that were starting to get up there as far as their payday was concerned, whether it be Aaron Wiggins or Isaiah Joe. And now most recently, trading Lou Dort in a 3-team deal involving the Hawks and the Mavericks that net the Oklahoma City Thunder 3 future second-round draft picks. All of this movement this offseason has led them to acquiring 7 additional second-round draft picks, and that just goes along with the boatload of future first-round draft picks that they have between now and 2031, and puts them in a position with these picks to use for trades, puts them in position to seemingly get anybody that they want to pair up with SGA and Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren. Although after his performance in the Western Conference Finals, how he played like a guy that was absolutely terrified of Victor Wembanyama, Chet Holmgren has a lot to prove coming into this coming season. He's probably amongst, I think we can fairly say, the top 5 players in the league with the most pressure put on top of them. But you give Sam Presti a lot of credit here because he did these moves in response to protecting the Thunder's salary cap standing and how it would match them up when it comes to the second apron and creating $17 million now in the trade exemption, he could have very easily just declined Lou Dort's team option, but instead he picks it up. Lou Dort had been the longest tenured Thunder player, was a good soldier for them, a guy that came in on a two-way contract when he was essentially guaranteed nothing as an undrafted player in 2019. Played himself into a key role player on that team. He still gets his payday with $17.7 million coming to him this coming season. The Thunder cashed that in for future trade assets. So, in a way, it's a win for everyone because now he gets to go to the Hawks where he's going to be viewed as a more important piece there, a bigger chance to prove himself for an even bigger payday than he probably would have ever gotten from the Thunder. And the Thunder set themselves up well as far as the trade market in the future is concerned. So it's a win all the way around for everybody involved in this. What is not a win all the way around and is becoming more aggravating by the week and the day is the continued ongoing free agency of LeBron James. Can we just end this nonsense already? Can someone wake me up when the season has started and tell me that LeBron James has picked a team? I understand he wasn't going to make an announcement over the last week because he wanted more attention upon himself and didn't want it trapped in the midst of the headlines of the World Cup and the baseball All-Star break. And in all likelihood, he wasn't going to do it at Fanatics Fest, where he would have had even more people watching. I don't know if he's going to do a TV special like The Decision, but he wants, in his mind, the hype to be at an all-time high when it feels like most people are like me. We're like, just pick a team already. Stop carrying on this nonsense. Stop dragging your feet through the mud. It's not like you're going to be signing a contract worth $53 million like you would have gotten from the Lakers. You're more or less going to be settling for the mid-level exception and going to be on a deal that pays you anywhere from $3 to $6 million next year. For him to now be carrying this on so long, where Adam Silver's coming out and saying, oh, we're waiting on LeBron to make a decision for where he plays next year before they finalize the 2026-2027 schedule. Like, come on. As I've said many times in the last couple of weeks, can we get our heads around and realize that this is not a mid-20s LeBron James anymore, where he's at the peak of his superpowers and, yes, should be commanding all this attention? He's 41 years old. Well, he's still a very, very good player. He's not the best player in the league anymore. There are other great players in this sport, other young players that are making a bigger impact on this league right now than he is. He's not going to be coming to a team and changing their fortunes into them immediately becoming a championship team. Like, what the hell are we doing here? We're really catering to this guy when it's not like he's constantly been to the finals in recent years. His last championship was that bubble championship about 6 years ago. Dude, just pick a team and make your decision already and stop playing these mental head games where, oh, you're talking about a process and getting 76er fans all excited, or you think being at Fanatics Fest and teasing that you have some big news to announce and then saying, oh, we're close to a decision. Just pick a damn team. You're acting like this is a life or death situation when instead you're just being the most annoying human being in the world. In some ways, this is making him look worse than the decision. He makes himself look like a three-ring circus between this, all the patches that he's now putting on his jersey. He put a patch on his jersey to signify his 23rd season in the NBA, and you know that he's going to do that for his 24th season in the NBA this coming year. Can we just end the chicanery, end the nonsense, pick a team already, and move the hell on?
I'll be back.
Last week was the MLB All-Star Game. And of all of the All-Star games, MLB's All-Star Game comes off as feeling the most like a regular game. They don't even play the Pro Bowl anymore. That was a total waste of everybody's time. You had so many players always opting out of that based on its placement that they turned it into a flag football game and a skills competition week in the week between the championship games and the Super Bowl. The NHL does this kind of quirky tournament, I guess you want to call it, during the game, constituting of best players from each division. And then you have the NBA All-Star Game, which they've changed up the format of so many times that it's hard to keep track. Whereas with baseball, it's remained the same. Yeah, you don't get a pitcher going 7 or 8 innings because you have so many pitchers on the staff that you want to get everybody in, but it's still a 9-inning baseball game, still out there with defenders at all the positions, DH on both sides. And it has turned into what modern baseball is mostly about. Launch angle, and pitchers coming in, throwing really, really hard with nasty stuff and striking out batters. And you look at outside of the first inning of that game, there was not a lot of action after Bellinger and Rice each had their RBI singles. You didn't have another run scored until Miguel Vargas's home run in the 8th inning, and the two pitching staffs combined for 27 strikeouts amongst the 54 outs. It was kind of a boring game, didn't exactly captivate or excite the real diehard baseball fan. Just at times sitting there watching the radar gun, see how hard guys were throwing, even though you were missing some of the real elite flamethrowers in this sport with Mizorowski, Skeens, Schlittler, and Ohtani not pitching in this game. But it was a good break in the action in this baseball season, as now the attention is going to turn toward MLB's trade deadline. And the problem here is you don't have a lot of teams that are sellers, at least as of right now. You don't have a lot of teams that view themselves as out of the mix. And you look at all of these division races, with the exception of the National League West, where the Dodgers have a double-digit lead over everyone. Each division has the race with at least a good week of baseball reach within it. The Cubs are 6 games back of the Brewers, but a good week could have them 2 to 3 games out in the division. You've got the Phillies and the Marlins both within 6 games of the Atlanta Braves. In the West, you've got Seattle half game back, the Astros 4 games back of the Texas Rangers. And in the Central, you've got both the Guardians and the Twins within 4 games of that race. And that's not even including the wild card race, where you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams that are within 4 games of that third wild card spot in the American League, and 8 within 3 games of that last spot in the National League. Hell, I don't even think you can truly rule out the Cincinnati Reds, even though they're 8 games under. But who knows what they would have to sell off. They just made a very wise investment in this last week, locking up their young pitcher, Chase Burns, to a 7-year contract extension. I'll never get on a young player or criticize someone for taking the money early. He's now guaranteed $105 million no matter what going forward. And this is a guy that's come up in the last year after being a first-round draft pick 2 years ago and gotten off to a great start in his career. As of right now, you will look at the trade deadline, and the only real guarantees that you have as far as sellers are probably the A's, the Royals, and the Angels in the American League. And in the National League, the San Francisco Giants, the Colorado Rockies, and the New York Mets. But what are you exactly getting out of those teams? When it comes to the Royals, they're not trading Bobby Witt. The Angels probably not going to trade Mike Trout. The Rockies, as I mentioned earlier, are not going to trade Hunter Goodman. And the San Francisco Giants, I'm sure they would love to get out from the Rafael Devers contract, but someone is either going to want them to pay a good chunk of that or not going to be willing to give up a big prospect for a guy that is probably going to be mostly a DH over the next 10 years of that deal. The interesting team is, of course, going to be in our area, the New York Mets. And what's really intriguing is you see all these reports out there of who's not going to be available at the deadline. Juan Soto, AJ Ewing, Carson Bench, Nolan McLean, Christian Scott, and that's about it. Anybody else they're going to be willing to talk about, have conversations about. And you notice who's not in that mix of untouchables. Francisco Lindor, who's in the midst of a down year by his standards, largely due to injuries. But it's clear that there is something amiss when it comes to this Met team. Because for the last 2 years, they've had the second highest payroll in baseball, behind only the Los Angeles Dodgers. And this is going to be 2 consecutive years of them not making the playoffs. Both of the first 2 years of the Juan Soto contract, they're going to be missing the postseason. While last year you saw a slow drip and decline in that team, this year it's been a train wreck from the beginning and a mess that they've never been able to sort out. Now, there have been injuries here, and the Clay Holmes injury was the most unpredictable thing that you'll ever see, with him taking a baseball off the ankle. But they changed off of a lot of guys that were consistent regulars that weren't getting hurt in the offseason, and brought in a lot of players that are nothing but hurt, like Polanco and Roberts Jr. And then you lose Lindor in the middle of April, and they've never been able to get up off the mat. Then you also add into the mix of things here what has now been a year and a half of not so kumbaya relationship between Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor. And I'm not going to put this at the level of Jeter and A-Rod yet, where clearly there was a divide in that Yankee locker room that was only saved by the presence of CC Sabathia joining the team in 2009. And it's certainly not reached the level of what you had back in the 70s between Thurman Munson and Reggie Jackson. Hell, I wouldn't even put this on par with what you had the last several years with Francisco Lindor and Jeff McNeil, where they made up that story about that raccoon, but clearly got in a fight in the locker room hallway. But these two clearly do not like each other. It's clearly caused some kind of irreparable damage in that locker room and caused something along the lines of, you ever have a situation where you go out with friends, out with a bunch of friends, and there's two people in that group of friends that they're friends with everybody else, but they don't like each other for whatever the reason may be, and it creates this kind of uncomfortable vibe, this uncomfortable situation. That's what it feels like you have right now when it comes to Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto. And Juan Soto's still got, although he can opt out of his contract in 4 years, he's still got another 14 years left on his contract. Francisco Lindor, however, is the somewhat older player and has less time remaining on his deal. The problem that the Mets organization runs into here is you haven't done a lot of winning with Lindor here. He's got 5 years at an average annual salary of $32 million per year left on his contract. He's coming off an injury, has underperformed this season, and he has a no-trade clause. So you would have to, if you were to trade him, find somewhere where he wants to go to. But it seems like he's in love with the New York lifestyle, in love with the New York atmosphere. So that you've got to wonder, is this something that can be repaired? Or is there so much irreparable damage that to save the future of this Met team and clear up the vibe on this team, do you have to find somewhere this offseason to trade Francisco Lindor? Because I don't think this is a deal that you can make at the trade deadline. There's very few teams that are looking for a shortstop right now. Very few teams that would make a deal like this. And you don't know what the baseball climate is going to be yet when it comes to the upcoming CBA. So those are the kind of things that you need to get settled and locked down before you ever could think about making a trade of Francisco Lindor type proportions. He could still be a very good player, still be someone that helps someone, but it's got to be a place where he wants to go and a place where, depending on what the climate is financially in baseball after this offseason, that will be able to fit him in within any potential restraints that they could have. And that, my friends, was Keeping It Sports with M3 for Monday, July 20th, 2026. Everyone, please have a great night. Have a fun, safe, happy, healthy week. Remember, you get one life, people, so you might as well try to live it up to the fullest. And I'll talk to you guys again, same time next week. Until then, peace.
We have to go. Good night, everybody. I have had enough of you. Thank you for all the fun. Thank you. Hey, shut up, will you?
I don't want to see you. I don't want to hear you. I don't want to smell you. Now leave. I'll be back.